video shows college kids refusing to support America in the Olympics. Finally, something I have in common with miseducated, childish, spoiled, and ungrateful college kids. Rooting against prima donna and anti-American teams like the men's basketball team and the women's soccer team really is a lot of fun. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. We are the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. You know, with the special access code for the Dr. Duke Show, that's DRDUKE, you can save up to 66% on all merchandise at MyPillow. In fact, they're having a really cool pillow sale this week. Just use our access code, DRDUKE, and you can get a $69 pillow for just $29. We start today in South Florida, where college students say when it comes to cheering on the red, white, and blue in the Summer Olympics, they'll be applauding for individual athletes, not the racist USA. Well, you know, as the teaser showed, this is about the only thing I agree with college kids. Now, my reasons are 180 degrees the opposite. Our American school kids, college kids, have been so indoctrinated by their ignorant professors. They hate this country. They think this is the worst country in the world. They think this country is nothing They think that this country is about nothing short of colonialism and rape and violence and slavery. So I get why these idiots aren't supporting the American team. They're supporting individual athletes, not the red, white, and blue. But look, tell me you don't have a little bit of schadenfreude. Tell me it doesn't just kind of bring a little smile to your face when you see the NBA to lose their second game already of these Olympics. One was a tune-up, and now getting beat by France. I mean, my God, freedom fries!
Français.
The French. The French haven't been manly since a little 5'4" Napoleon took a horse, and they just took down the American team. All those social justice warriors, all that kneeling and bowing, and then, the women's soccer team. Are you really brokenhearted that the Swedes took it to them? Is it really such a calamity that these whiny, entitled, greedy women, the one team more than any other team in the American Olympic squad that's likely to kneel and cow to the forces of political correctness? Isn't it kind of nice to see them get theirs? I mean, you know, this is the same team that lost to a group of 15-year-old boys, so really nice to see them. So again, we've reached, they say you can't reach common ground. What does Dr. Duke have in common with a bunch of badly educated anti-American college kids? Well, we're both not really rooting for the American Olympic team. So there it is.
Well, that's saying something there. And I will say, when I heard that Sweden beat the women's soccer team, I did cheer and put on a little ABBA. But anyway.
I went and bought a little Lutefisk.
Did you?
Had some of that, yep.
I bet you actually probably did. I went to IKEA. It was delicious. Anyway, so we talked about being in South Florida. It was at the University of South Florida, where campus reform reporter Ophelia Jacobson, she's been going out to the campuses and getting all the good answers, asking this time, specifically, you know, the Olympics, they're happening. Are you cheering for the American teams?
Are you going to be rooting for Team USA?
I don't root for countries, I root for athletes.
Will you be rooting for Team USA?
I'm going to be rooting for athletes individually. I'm not going to be rooting for any team just because it's some country that I live in, because the truth is patriotism shouldn't be that strong. I'm in this country because I was born in it, and because it gives me some opportunities. It doesn't mean that there aren't things to fix, so I'm not going to root on someone just because they come from the same place as me. I'm not proud to live in a country where I can't even go down my own neighborhood and see people putting up their Blue Lives Matter flags telling me that my life doesn't matter.
I root for particular athletes rather than the country as a whole.
If you were to ask me in the last administration, maybe not.
Now that Biden's in office, you'll root for Team USA.
Well, I guess when you say it like that.
And you know, that African-American kid really shows you what's wrong with universities. I mean, fine, this is America. You want to root for athletes, root for athletes. But this idea that because somebody supports the police means they don't care about your life. Yes. What a...
Did someone actually say it to him is the question. Did someone say, your life does not matter?
Because I support the police.
Exactly.
Childish.
Well, it's so fascinating to me on this because I thought everything for the left is about the collective, and it has to be about the whole and not the individual until it comes to actually something caring about the country as a whole, where this is something. The Olympics is supposed to be, at least in my mind growing up, I always thought the Olympics was the opportunity for every single American to be like, yes, let's cheer for some sport, let's enjoy, let's, you know, and you get to learn the backstories and the sacrifices that all these athletes have made and their families have made for them. And it was always fun. And now we can't cheer for Team USA. We have to cheer for just specific individuals, and it's whatever is on their list of, you know, wokeness scale.
That's right.
Like, you can't cheer for just any old person, individual.
I'll bet you everything I own that the percentage of Olympian athletes in these games for America, competing for the United States, is significantly higher than the 13% that African Americans occupy in this country. There are a significantly more number of African Americans than the 13% population number. So in other words, blacks are overrepresented on this team, and yet they're still arguing as if somehow the Olympics themselves, America, right? We're not giving opportunity, right? Blue Lives Matter are killing people, but to fly your Blue Lives Matter flag means you hate these black athletes. It's absolute nonsense. And what you said too, I think, is important. Collectivism is the point, right, of socialism. That's why the collectivist socialists, including these idiot kids, have to take what America collectively stands for and trash it. This is how the Soviets always did this kind of thing, right? What's good for me is the opposite of what we're going to do with you.
Well, and on top of that, with that same kid, the way he said, you know, just because I'm born here doesn't mean I need to cheer, like, because there's things to work on. And I want to say, okay, that means if you're doing something, I guess I don't have to cheer for you because you're not perfect either. And because he's taking that approach.
And yet, if you ask this little glittering child of college ignorance, how do you feel about the Nigerians being really proud of their Olympic team? How do you feel about the people in the Congo? They got 3 Olympic athletes this year. How do you feel about their pride? Oh, that's wonderful. It's good that those other countries are other countries. It's wonderful seeing them be excited about their Olympic teams. That's okay. But no, for me, with regards to this country alone, patriotism's overdone.
All right, before we move on to our next story, just a quick reminder that the best way to access our content is to download our Freedom Project Media app. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store, and obviously, once you download, make sure you allow for notifications. Also, if you like listening to the audio podcast, we're available on Apple, Google, SoundCloud, and pretty much everywhere else. Now, on to our next story, where, you know, we're talking about the Olympics. France is one of those countries who just beat the NBA players.
Vive la France!
Anywho, France should be disqualified because all of their food is whiteness. It is whiteness, I say, and that is just not acceptable. Now, according to a law professor from Connecticut, yes, Connecticut University,
Mathilde,
named Mathilde Cohen, the food of the French is racist. Speaking at a seminar organized by the Elite Sciences Po in Nanterre University outside of Paris, Cohen said that French eating habits reinforced the dominance of white people over ethnic minorities. It was an academic paper, of course there are always academic papers that were written that formed part of her Sciences Po seminar, and Cohen, who is a former research fellow at the French National Center for Scientific Research, claimed that French, their eating culture, has been the central means of racial and ethnic identity formation through slavery, colonialism, and immigration. The whiteness of French food is all the more powerful in that it is unnamed. Food is unnamed.
Translation. And she admits in her own stupid argument that food really isn't a race.
It is
has nothing
unnamed,
to do with exactly.
Yes. It is enabling the racial majority to benefit from food privileges without having to acknowledge their racial origin.
So you can't eat a bouillabaisse unless you acknowledge that I am white. Before I eat this bounty from La Marseille, before I eat this bounty from La Mer, I'm going, all this stuff that crawls around the bottom of the ocean. Or when you pick up the stone and you see the escargot, before we can eat this stuff as good Frenchmen, we have to admit we are white. Nous sommes blancs, right? And apologize to Pepe Le Pew and all the racist people we have treated so badly down through the centuries.
Okay, well, on that note, I just wonder what Miss Julia Child would have said about this. Julia Child. Anywho, according to the abstract of this paper, food is fundamental to French identity.
May I raise my hands, Mademoiselle America?
Oui, oui.
Is not food essential to the existence of mankind?
Oh, that's
In
racist.
what sense can
That's
she
sexist
what
right
can
there.
she s- And what is this not a tautology? Food is fundamental to French identity. I don't understand these people. Croissant.
So too is the denial of structural racism and racial identity. Both tenets are central to the nation's self-definition, making them all the more important to think about together. This article purports to identify and critique a form of French food, whiteness.
Blancheté alimentaire, she calls it.
That is the use of food and eating practices to reify and reinforce whiteness.
What this young woman does not understand, that we Francais, we eat food and drink champagne. We do so to be able to get girls drunk and to have the sex with them. We are not doing this to be racist against anyone else. It's vive l'amour. Elf Spring, we have bread and wine and thou, as your American poet said. What is this woman talking about? Send her to Paris. We'll see how gay Paris is for her.
All right, well, as she continues in the abstract, to do so, it develops 4 case studies of how
Quatre.
Quatre.
A total of quatre. Really?
Quatre.
That's all you
Law
got, lady?
elevates a fiction of homogeneous French white food as superior and normative at the expense of alternative ways of eating and their eaters. Here are the quatre. The law of geographical indications, school lunches, citizenship, and cultural heritage. Now, I've seen what the French kids eat at their schools, and if we want to talk about school lunches, let's talk about how great they are in France compared to what Michelle Obama gave our children, our poor children. The French kids are eating
Camembert and brie.
Yeah,
Les fines fromages.
Our kids will look at brie and go, ew.
Le vegetable. With the fresh vegetables we feed these kids. We give them really good French wine and coffee. What are you talking about?
But I think this author, Matilda, must also be mad because it's this whole thing, the French are fattest or sizest, if you will, because butter and cream for every meal.
But they are so much less fat than Vive Americans. I tell you, this woman, if she take one step outside of Paris, she could eat kebabs in the Muslim regions, and they probably would stone her.
Yeah, probably.
So you could say what you want, lady, but one step out, go to the banlieue that surround Paris, where all the unassimilated Muslim immigrants are. Wear your American dress and tell them how sexist, how patriarchal the Parisians are as they're dragging you back into their basement for all sorts of fun time. You go ahead and try that.
Meanwhile, here in America, we have the Washington Post that has articles entitled, "Stop Calling Food Exotic Because Racism and Xenophobia."
Yeah.
Well, we're going to keep on rolling with food, sort of, because when you go from French food to Girl Scout cookies here in America, we're going to talk about the Girl Scouts next, who are also a bunch of racists. Everyone's just racist, in case you didn't know. The leadership of the Girl Scouts is telling its own members that by being colorblind, they are perpetuating racism. So parents are now to counteract this racism of their, daughters, sons, whatever they're calling Girl Scouts these days, and they're supposed to be talking about racism regularly. Now, an online resource was put out there for the parents to help take action against racism. That's what it is. Take action against racism. As it states, while we should be having conversations about race and racism regularly, checking in with your girl is crucial when racist violence claims lives and sparks widespread protest, grief, and unrest around the nation. Kids of all ages, backgrounds, and skin tones are feeling a range of emotions in response. They're sad, scared, angry, and confused.
Yeah, so isn't this wonderful? The Girl Scouts have been a disaster for a long time.
Yes.
They've been all into lesbianism and feminism and Marxism and you name it, transgenderism. This is what happens when the Boy Scouts, like the YMCA and the YWCA, they drop the Christianity and they become something the exact opposite of what they were meant to be. Same thing with the Scouts, by the way, which lost their Christian religious heritage and now are all about social justice. I'm really interested, though, in seeing what do the new woke badges, what do the new woke merit badges look like now? So,
well, have they gotten rid of merit badges? Because meritocracy, we can't have that. I wonder if we can't have
merit
that.
badges are
Should be.
Yeah. So everybody should get one just for being part of the group.
Pretty much at this point. I mean, I haven't kept up with my local Girl Scouts, but of course I was a Girl Scout. You all probably guessed that by now. But
you were a Girl Scout and you were in band camp.
No, I did not go to band camp, although I should have.
You were in the band.
Of course I was in the band. Okay. Cool kids are in the band. Anyway, the way they say it in this paragraph to the parents, the simple fact that they are saying that the parents are supposed to talk about race and racism regularly, and that the violence is claiming lives and sparks widespread protest, grief, and unrest. They're talking all about the police, right, and what the police are doing. But I guess if you live anywhere in the Chicago area, Mom and Dad, you can talk about every single day, especially on the weekends when all the crime and violence is happening in Chicago. So is that what they're talking about that we should be doing?
Yeah, that's
the black on black crime. Should we be talking about that too?
That's
or
how you know
not?
That's how you know that the social justice is really a scam, because they don't really care about black lives. If they cared about black lives, they'd care about black lives lost to other black people, which is the highest percentage of people who are being killed by blacks, right? Who's killing most blacks in this country? Black people. Now, you could also talk about how many black citizens Democrats kill with all of their policies, with all of their denying Chicago blacks, good, decent Chicago black people, denying them the right to buy guns, to have these harsh anti-weapons, anti-Second Amendment bills that people making it harder. You talk about it's much easier for a black person living in a bad neighborhood to get an ID than it is for a black person living in a bad neighborhood to get a gun. You're responsible, Chicago, you and you liberals, for making it harder for decent, hardworking African Americans to defend themselves from all the other blacks who are killing them. Take a look. You want to know where the real murderers of black people are? You need look no further than the Democrat Party.
Now, as this advice, guidance continues, they say it may be tempting to avoid the topic of race and racism altogether, especially for those who were taught it's something that isn't polite to discuss. But statistics show, they don't cite what these statistics are, by the way, that justice, health, and education systems aren't fair in basic ways that can negatively affect a girl's life on a foundational level. Dissect that entire thing. They're trying to claim, statistics say we don't know what they're talking about, justice, health, and education in a girl's life are not in a basic way.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Way is not the same.
Who in this, you know the answers to these, Katie. Who in this country benefits more from education right now, women or men?
Me.
Women. Who is over-enrolled in college undergraduate programs, women or men?
Women.
Who has access, much more access to most of our graduate programs and law schools, women or men?
Women.
Right. And yet, somehow, education is prejudicial against women. Go yourself with that. So much ugliness in this world, so much insanity. It's time for instant classics. I mentioned that the world is both a crazy place and it is a beautiful place. No artist in the history of the world is more iconographically associated with madness and beauty than Vincent van Gogh. So this is, my friends, Vincent van Gogh week on the Dr. Duke Show. We're going to look at 5 paintings. We're going to look at the work of this genius man. We're going to consider the mental stress he was under and how the genius of humanity to take suffering and tragedy and to somehow, through grinding suffering and effort, turn it into some of the most beautiful art anyone has ever conceived. So take a look at the first image for today. This is a self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh. It's one of the last, it's either the last or the second to last self-picture that Van Gogh produced in his life. In fact, over a 10-year period, he painted himself over 32 times. He painted himself because he often lacked the money to pay his models. Art historians are not quite sure if this self-portrait or the famous one with him with his ear bandaged is actually the final self-portrait, but this one is from 1889, the last year of his life. Van Gogh sent this picture to his younger brother Theo, his art dealer, and with an accompanying letter that read, quote, "Theo, you will need to study the picture for a time. I hope you will notice that my facial expressions have become much calmer, although my eyes have the same insecure look as before, or so it appears to me," unquote. And take a look at this, one of these final pictures. I mean, it is a penetrating look in the eyes of Vincent van Gogh. You see a lifetime of suffering and of alienation in those eyes. For Vincent to look at those eyes and say, those eyes reflect the insecurities, is an understatement. More than just the insecurities of life. You can see the tormenting, non-stop pressure he's been under his whole life to create and then to deal with the inability of the people and the critics to recognize his genius. But he looks calm, as he said. Really interesting, though, if you look around, look at his hair, and look at the swirls that make up the background. I mean, for all of that penetrating, fixed look, you can see the chaos that surrounds him, those beautiful blues and lavenders and grays, those swirly lines that seem to surround him. It's as if he's caught in some kind of a fog. And given his potential bipolarity or some other fully undiagnosed mental issues that he had, that swirling haze of gray and blue and lavender really does suggest, doesn't it, how deeply, deeply Vincent was lost in his own inability to overcome himself. And at this point, he had already checked himself for this last year of his life into a sanitarium, a mental hospital. Voluntarily, he did it. And he wrote to Theo repeatedly, the only thing that stops me from going mad, the only thing that stops me from fully losing my mind is painting. And so this year of his life, 1889, 4 of the 5 paintings I'm going to show you this week are from the last year of his life, 1889. And those 4 are among the 5 greatest paintings we ever got from Vincent. So it's remarkable how the more he suffered, the more tragic his situation, the more pain he was in, the more he painted. And the more he painted, the better his paintings got. It's really something unique about human beings. I said it at the beginning of this segment. We are the only creatures in the history of the universe, as far as we know, who can take misery and suffering, can take tragedy, to find our lives and our futures and our values and our worldview to be completely destroyed. And yet, rather, in the process of suffering over those terrible revelations, can transmute suffering and misery into art. That's a transformational thing. It's one of the things that makes human beings most like God, the ability to take suffering and misery, to transpose it, and on the other side, produce beauty, art, and truth.
Okie dokie. If you enjoy our content, please consider joining the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation allows us to keep bringing you these crazy stories every day. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And of course, as a little thank you, we will ship you our signature tumbler. Now, before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, we're giving a shout-out to Karen. Oh, poor Karen. From Chico, California. Karen, thank you for supporting us.
Chico. I remember the theme song from Chico and the Man from the 70s. Chico. Freddie Prinze, baby. Not Freddie Prinze Jr., the original Freddie Prinze. Chico. Anyhow, Karen, stay Karen. It's a pretty name. Don't let the idiots get you down. We appreciate you. Until next time, stay educated. Mes amis. Mes amis. Pour le français. Stay educated. Eat a croissant. Wear a beret. And giggle, giggle, giggle at the NBA basketball team in the Olympics.